So good morning, and thank you for joining me to discuss the results of our performance audit of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. With me today are Deputy Auditor Generals for audits, Janet Chickie-Chop to my right and Gordon Denlinger to my left, whose team worked on this audit. And I want to start by thanking our audit team for their tireless work to ensure that we have a complete and meaningful audit report. I'd also like to thank the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission for its cooperation and full participation in this audit. To give you some background, we're required by law to audit the Turnpike Commission every 4 years. Specifically, we're responsible for auditing the Turnpike Commission's finances, performance, and activities. The period for this audit is June 1st, 2018 through June 13th, 2022. What we looked at was determining if the amount of money the Turnpike Commission is collecting is sufficient to fulfill its payment obligations and plan capital improvement projects, looking at the effectiveness of the processes of toll collections, including Easy Pass and toll-by plates, examining enforcement mechanisms for uncollected tolls, and evaluating provisions in vendor contracts to aid in prohibiting racial discrimination and sexual harassment at workplaces. In all, our auditors had 3 findings and made 23 recommendations, 21 for the Turnpike Commission and 2 for the General Assembly. Biggest takeaway from this audit is that the Turnpike Commission did not get into the situation itself. And the legislature and the executive branch need to work together now to ensure the Turnpike is financially viable for the future. Our first finding shows that the Turnpike Commission is still facing significant challenges with collecting toll revenue. This impacts the Turnpike Commission's ability to make enough money to meet its bottom line, make future payments to PennDOT under Acts 44 and 89, and to pay off its debt and finance capital expenditures. Today, right now, the Pennsylvania Turnpike has more debt than the entire state government of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The Turnpike's debt is $13.2 billion. The general obligation debt for all Pennsylvania government activities is $11.7 billion. This situation was decades in the making. From tolls only being raised 5 times in 64 years prior to Act 44, to legislation that forced the Turnpike to borrow money. And the only way to pay for all this was to raise tolls. So this morning, if you're traveling from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh and back using your Easy Pass, it will cost you $66. If you're making the same trip using a commercial vehicle, it will cost you $250. And consider this, each year for the next 28 years, the Turnpike will have to raise tolls to meet its current financial obligations. One of those obligations is to pay off the debt it incurred when it was required to make payments to PennDOT under Act 44 and 89. This year, the Turnpike Commission made its last required payment of $450 million to PennDOT and now must make an annual payment of $50 million. But as I stated earlier, the Turnpike Commission is in more debt than the entire state government of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. To determine how much to charge travelers using the Turnpike Commission's consultants provided it with projected revenue based on projections for travel. But if just one of those variables, such as a major roadway shutdown pandemic, an economic downturn, or an increase in gas prices should happen, tolls would have to be increased again to make up the difference. At some point, the Turnpike Commission will be forced to price itself out of the market to keep up with its bills. As we discuss tolls and the impact of projects on Turnpike revenues, I want to take a moment to highlight the Turnpike Commission's actions during the COVID-19 pandemic years. While passenger vehicle traffic dropped in 2020, commercial traffic remained steady, ensuring that there was a constant stream of revenue. The Turnpike Commission also took steps to reduce its overhead, which helped make up for other losses. By being responsive and by being efficient and by being innovative, the Turnpike Commission was able to keep itself afloat. We recommend the Turnpike explore ways to reduce operating costs, including collaborating with other state agencies to reduce operational and administrative costs. And the Turnpike needs to continue to analyze managing its debt, especially considering the recent increase in interest rates. It took advantage of interest rates drops during the pandemic to reduce its debt, and it should keep looking for those type of opportunities. But I want to be clear. The Turnpike Commission will still need the legislature's help to get out of debt. We recommend the General Assembly take a closer look at Acts 44 and 89 and consider drafting new legislation to mitigate the current burden placed on the Turnpike Commission. We also recommend that the Turnpike Commission's annual $50 million payment to PennDOT not be increased given their present circumstances. In fact, we recommend the legislature look at removing or reducing the Turnpike Commission's requirement to pay PennDOT $50 million each year through 2057. Our second finding shows the Turnpike Commission must continue to seek new ways to collect tolls due from both in-state and out-of-state travelers. Unpaid tolls or leakage is a significant problem for the Turnpike, especially given the financial challenges it faces. The situation got worse largely due to the toll-by-plate method piloted in 2016 and expanded during the pandemic. Travelers without E-ZPass thought they were traveling for free because they didn't understand toll-by-plate. They cannot. In total, $104 million is still owed to the Turnpike Commission for fiscal years 2020 and 2021. About a quarter of unpaid bills happened because PennDOT either had the wrong address or for the car owner or no address at all. We must find a way to make sure the bills are getting to where they need to go. Our auditors have highlighted 11 recommendations to improve collections, which include looking at more consistent enforcement and looking and working with the legislature to close the loopholes to current laws. At some point, and maybe sooner than later, it's going to be too expensive to use the Turnpike for both travelers and also for commerce. And frankly, it's unacceptable for such a historic roadway so vital to Pennsylvania's economy and links us to friends and families from across the state. One solution isn't going to solve this problem. For years, there have been meetings and hearings trying to figure out a way to solve these problems. And thus far, nothing has happened. Our audit team has laid out 23 recommendations and ways to prevent the Turnpike from being the nicest roadway in the nation that no one ever uses because it's too expensive. Now is the time to make real headway to ensure the Turnpike will continue to provide an invaluable service to all who travel through and from Pennsylvania. Now I'll open it up to any questions. Good morning.
I was just wondering, whenever your predecessor talked about this problem, one of the solutions that he proposed was legalizing and taxing recreational marijuana. I have not seen your recommendations, but is that in there, or is that something you would recommend?
And Janet and Gordon, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that is one of the recommendations.
It is not.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not.
You talked about the legislature needing to get involved. I think seeing what happened with some of the gas tax discussions this year, that can be a bit of a heavy lift for action sometimes to be taken. My question to you is, what is your thought about the chances of some of these recommendations, the ones that need help getting through?
Right, well, this situation didn't happen overnight. This was years in the making. So it's going to take both the legislature and the executive branch and the Turnpike Commission working together to try and solve some of these issues. And one solution, as I stated, isn't going to solve this problem. It's going to take a step-by-step approach with everybody working together in a nonpartisan effort.
General, since they were paying $450 and now are only paying $50, shouldn't that lead to a brighter future and an easier burden for them?
You would think that it should, but considering that it's currently $13.2 billion in debt, even with that reduction in payment, it's still going to be hard for the Turnpike to get out of that.
Do you recommend more aggressive enforcement in terms of if I haven't paid my tolls, maybe there should be a suspending of my license or registration or somehow? There is a link, you know what cars and what license plate there are, that doesn't seem that there's the right hand is knowing what the left hand is doing when it comes to PennDOT.
Right, and that's just part of it, and I believe that may be something that is part of our recommendations. But another issue is being able to read the license plates at all. There are drivers who still have the old license plates, and the whatever mechanisms that are to capture those license plates is not capturing them. So what you're saying, that's part of the problem. And also the ability to read license plates is another part of the problem. And there are several factors that's causing this to happen.
Was it fiscally prudent to go to eliminating toll takers, or would we be better off having toll takers and actual human beings there making sure people are paying tolls?
Well, again, that if you look at our 23 recommendations, I think we cover a lot of that. Jan?
I just wanted to follow up on Dennis's. There is a law with regard to suspensions that is already out there. And we do look at that in our report, but it really is not working very well, which is one of the things that need to get changed with regard to the legislation. I believe, if I'm correct, that there's like a $34 million liability that they're still not collecting, even though these vehicles have been suspended. So it's quite an issue that needs to be addressed.
So the law itself is not tough enough, or they're not following through on it?
I don't remember exactly what the specifics are. It's probably both, though, really. It's really an issue of both. I think they need to get harder in the suspension, but I think the follow-through really isn't working like it was expected.
And again, that's why one of the recommendations is that the legislature and the executive branch and PennDOT need to get together and to work on either changing the legislation or strengthening it. Yes?
So if nothing is done, and we've seen this going back to the previous question, a bit of a heavy lift in the legislature, I'm wondering if there is any sense from your office, or whether your office has calculated how quickly debt will continue to rise, and where would we be in 4 years, or where would the Turnpike be in 4 years if nothing?
That's a good question. So this issue was first brought to their attention in 2013, and you see where we are as of right now. So as far as any calculations in the future, that a lot of that's going to depend on ridership and some of the other things that I had discussed. But as far as doing nothing, in my opinion, that's not an option.
If you interact with the Turnpike Commission, you'll see that they in fact have laid out through their analyst a roadmap to solvency through 2050 that assumes that everything perfect holds together in the universe. There's no future pandemic, there's no major economic collapse, what have you. So they do, in their own defense, have a plan through 2050 to remain solvent. But we're saying you've left yourself no margin for a major calamity. So that's our concern.
Sorry, Jan, then Dennis.
I was just wondering, because I haven't seen your recommendations, I mean, do they get the turnpike to solvency, or, I mean, what's the bottom line here of what you're proposing happen?
The bottom line is that the legislature and the executive branch and the Turnpike need to work together to solve this problem. And again, like Gordon Dillinger just said, is that yes, there are plans through the consultants of the Turnpike, but as we stated earlier, everything would have to be absolutely perfect in order for that plan to work. It's a good plan, but as we know, not everything remains perfect. Something eventually is going to happen. Yes, Dennis.
As I understand it, you do this audit every 4 years, and so this would be your first time, your
Yes.
first crack at it. As you know, as a longtime local resident, the Turnpike has traditionally been a place where there's patronage and some fat and some things going on. What can you tell average people who have that view of the Turnpike, because you did just mention a moment ago they've gotten more efficient. Did you look at that part of it? Can you tell people that, yes, it's being run much better than it used to be, perhaps?
Well, and one of the things that I pointed out is that the Turnpike Commission, they have become more efficient and they have been innovative as a result of the pandemic. And you have to congratulate them on those efforts. As far as some of the other things how other people would feel about it, how the general public would feel about it, and me being part of that general public and me being from this area, there are many thoughts, and I really can't answer what the general public is thinking. The only thing that I can do is report on what our auditors found.
Any other questions?
Just one quick question about the license plate issue. You mentioned toll by plate is an issue if something is blocking the license plate, or if it's obscured, or if the cameras just don't pick it up. Is there anything specifically you identified there? Especially because I know there was a court case recently that involves license plates and really having anything on them. And just while we have you here, I'm just curious, did your report look into why some of these license plates aren't being recorded or picked up?
Yes, it did. And again, one of the things that I stated with regards to the license plates, one, the bills aren't getting to the individuals who are being billed, and another one is that, again, some of the license plates just aren't readable for whatever reason. And not only are we not talking about in-state, we're talking about out-of-state as well. And with regards to the out-of-state, one of the things that we had that the Turnpike Commission is doing is trying to get some type of cooperative agreement with other states. So people who travel, let's say from Ohio, go through the Turnpike, and if they don't pay their bills, working with the other states to make sure that they in fact do pay their bills.
One last question, if you would. Did you look at, do you have any concerns about free passes on the Turnpike? That is, people who are given, so maybe contractors while they're working, it's okay for them to be on, but then are they using it for personal as well? Is that something you guys actually looked at, and is there any issue there?
We didn't look at contractors, we did look at employees, and that's something that is included in the audit report. Yeah.
No, you're correct.
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.